Hi there, welcome to Nonsense Whisky. My name's VinPF, and on today's episode we're going to be covering an Ardbeg whisky. Now, I haven't covered many of these in the past. I've covered the 10, and I think I've covered the Perpetuum, but I don't really get much opportunity to try Ardbeg, but I don't tend to buy many of their bottles either. In fact, in terms of bottles that I've bought myself, this is the first time I have purchased one of their bottles. The previous two videos were sample-sized reviews, so first time I'm really covering something, and this is a pretty heavy way of going into it. Now, fans of the show, if you've been watching for any length of time, may know that about 3 years ago when I started this channel, I didn't really like peat at all. But I made a decision, if I'm going to cover whiskey on YouTube, and people are going to take me seriously, I need to cover all walks of whiskey. And I'm not talking any specific way of going. It has to be everything, or for me, what's the point? You know, there's no point me even just covering things that only I like. You know, I like to cover things that even I don't like, because then you get a perspective on my palate and where I'm at in the current period of time. I digress. Today, we're covering the Ardbeg Corryvreckan. Corryvreckan. I'm not sure of the proper way of saying it in Gaelic, but it means Cauldron of the Speckled Sea. Interesting. It's basically named after a whirlpool that's just north of Islay. It's somewhere in between Jura and Scarborough, and it's a pretty dangerous place to be by all accounts, or at least was back in the day. Nowadays we can navigate that pretty easily with powered motorboats and things like that, but back in the day that would have been a pretty dangerous place to sail down. This is named after it because it's all meant to be about the kind of swirling nature of it all, but I don't really subscribe to that, to be honest. I haven't really read much of the gumph on the back. There's a lot of lore on the back here. Not really interested in that. It's all about the whiskey for me. This is an absolute monster at 57.1%. 60 to 65 pounds in the UK. I picked this up at an airport for about that £60 mark, so I'm doing okay for that. Online, it's about £65. Not sure what you're going to pay for this worldwide. It's going to be more or less that sort of price, maybe a bit more expensive in some territories. It's been out since about 2008, when they relaunched the 10-year-old, in fact, so it's kind of like a standoff against that. So whereas the 10-year-old is kind of quintessential Ardbeg, this is losing an age statement but gaining much more of an ABV. But let's get into the whiskey and see if it's really worth that sort of money, shall we? Now, one thing to note is that on the front of the bottle, just about here, they proudly proclaim non-chill filtered, but they don't proudly proclaim no added colour. So I'm going to have to make an assumption and say they probably do add colour to this. They might not, I don't know, I can't be sure. But it's a funny thing, because if they do, I don't really get the point of it, because we've got this lovely green bottle here. Usually the point of added colour is to create parity across a range, so if they're on the shelf next to each other, they all look the same. For the non-discerning eye who's walking through travel retail or in a shop or whatever, usually darker means better to those kind of people. But obviously, probably talking to you directly here, I think you probably know better than that, I have to say. So the no added colour thing, I don't really care about it. If they're adding colour, more power to them, especially if it's behind this green glass. Nobody's going to really care about that. Personally, this could be clear for all I care, and if it still tasted good, crack on. So, let's get into the nose on this thing and see what we've got, shall we? Now, if you're looking for an entry road to peat, this is not that. This is very heavily peated. But I have to say, to my nose, it's not overpowering at all. But then, a fan of peat over here now. It's earthy, it's briny, a little bit grassy in there. But there's sweetness to be had, some honeys, that's for sure. All round, really nice nose. It's not ashy on the peat at all. It's just that kind of earthiness for the peat. Let's go onto the palate and see what we've got. Okay, initially it's kind of sweet and warming. Some honey notes going through there. That quickly disappears, and then you're getting some spiciness, some pepperiness coming through. More of that seaweed, that kind of briny element there as well. And once that starts disappearing, then you're starting to get your kind of oak and your char and your smoke coming through. I often talk about stages of a bonfire when I'm talking about peat, and it's something that you guys seem to like. So using that analogy, This is it's not a roaring bonfire, it's not like on fire, it is still got some embers, some flame to it, but it's a bonfire by the sea. It's probably the best way of saying it. It might be a bit pretentious sounding, but genuinely, if you've ever had a bonfire by the sea, you'll know what I'm talking about. You're getting that kind of sea salt air mixed in with the heat and the embers. Just absolutely superb, I have to say. The finish on this thing is huge. More of all of that coming through still, the kind of sweetness. And it all has those stages as it kind of drifts off. But really, obviously, the overarching flavour there is peat and smoke. So if you're not into those things, I can almost guarantee you won't like this. This is not your starting element for peat at all. But if you're a fan of peat, if you're a fan of Islay whiskies, heavily peated stuff, if you're a fan of Ardbeg and haven't tried this, you absolutely should. In where I'm from, in the UK, it's about £45 for the 10, and this is about £60 to £65. It's absolutely worth the upgrade. I took a bit of a punt. I don't usually like to spend more than £50, but I will for the right sort of whiskey, especially if it's like a really high ABV like this, 57.1, not to be sniffed at. I personally think it's absolutely worth it. If you can see just about here, I've enjoyed half a bottle before even reviewing this thing. This is going to go into the back of my kind of nice cabinet at the bottom, so I stay away from it a little bit. But hopefully, you guys will enjoy this as well. Let me know if you've tried it in the comments below. If you haven't, let me know why, especially if you're a non-peat person. And if you are a non-peat person, let me know, because I'm thinking about a video on how to kind of get into peat and how I evolved my peat palate over the years, and to be able to drink something like this. Like 3 years ago, wouldn't have been able to drink this, wouldn't have enjoyed it at all. But now, really loving those flavours. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again on another No Nonsense Whisky video.